When I think back to when I was a little kid and the first time I really started using a computer by myself and the internet, it wasn't YouTube or Google or any of the things that you'd associate with it if I'd say internet to you now. When I was a little kid, to me, the internet was this sound. When I heard that, I knew a few things. One, that once it was finished, I would have access to something I really didn't understand. Somehow, that sound meant I was now able to look at things I wouldn't otherwise be able to see. I'd be able to research information, kind of like I was at a library. I'd be able to send messages to friends who were in their own home, but in a way, talking to me at the exact same time. It meant that if there was a question or a thought or an idea or something I didn't quite understand, I could try punching it into a search engine or something like Ask Jeeves, and I might get an answer, or at the very least, something to kind of help me explain or figure out what it was I was trying to find. It meant that I could look up images of my favorite superheroes or comic books or things like that. It meant I could go on eBay and maybe track down that Yu-Gi-Oh card that I just hadn't been able to pull out of a booster. And more than all of that, it meant that once that sound was finished, I would be able to go online and play Diablo 2. Playing Hero Siege, you might have heard me talk about that game quite a few times and comparing the two, because there are a lot of similarities, and why not? In my mind, Diablo 2 is probably one of the best, if not the best, dungeon crawler of all time. And certainly to me, one of the most important, fun, and formative games that I played. Maybe next to several that I've mentioned prior doing this series so far. But that sound meant that once it was finished, not only would I be able to get online to play Diablo 2, I would be able to get my friends together, and for maybe an hour or two, we could, with our various characters, party up, go into a dungeon, and try to save the world from hell spilling out of whatever evil portal happened to be at the bottom of the catacomb. And it was a lot of fun. It wasn't like it is now, where you had a lot of different services that would allow you to instantaneously not only link up with your friends, but talk with them too. And it wasn't instantaneous. There was that wait. There was that weird, strange, alien robotic noise that the computer was going to make while it was trying to connect online. And the one thing that I'll never forget is when I'd be playing the game, having fun, enjoying BattleNet, and then all of a sudden, the game would kind of chug for a second, and through my speakers, I'd be hearing my mom or my dad talking like they were on the phone, and I'd be really confused. Of course, not too long after that, I quickly realized that, oh, right, this is going through a phone line, so if you pick up the phone, I'm going to hear your voice. It's funny how finicky it was back then, too, because picking up the phone and doing that didn't only mean that I could hear you, it also meant that the connection was gone, and you'd have to do that whole weird noise dance off again. Very different from today, when you can just turn on your computer or turn on your phone and access the internet with the push of a button, the swipe of a finger, or it just automatically does it. There's no thinking involved. It's instant. And that's so amazing to me because, not to say that it's a fairly recent thing, high speed for me. It's been around for a very long time in general. But I didn't actually have high-speed internet available to me in my own home until I was almost 19. For most of my adolescent life, well through grade school and into the end of high school, we had dial-up, which was an interesting thing and a frustrating thing at the exact same time. Part of it was where we used to live when we were on the military base. And then once we were posted to a new town, more often than not, we would be out in the countryside. And for most of the rural areas of Canada, that would mean that you didn't have access to fiber optic cables or any of the technology that would allow you to take advantage of high-speed internet. Now, talk with any provider at the time, and they'd assure you that eventually, and within the near future, maybe even the next few months, they would be seeing to it that high-speed internet access was available to you. Move ahead 5 years later, and that still hadn't happened, so we had been accustomed to basically dealing with dial-up for the rest of our lives. So it was kind of funny when I would go to school and have friends talking about Facebook and how that was going on, because it had only recently come out, or these new videos on this new website that had popped up called YouTube and telling me I should check them out. And I'd go home, and I would, and I'd be sitting there for a couple minutes, not just buffering the video, but waiting for the site itself to load. Something that all of my friends in town could do pretty much with the snap of their fingers. I had to sit and wait for about upwards of 10 or 12 minutes, depending on the video, depending on the quality, depending on a lot of things, depending on the phase of the moon, depending on whether or not we had a good connection that night, depending on whether or not a small animal hadn't chewed on the phone wires, depending on whether or not someone had forgotten I was using the internet and decided to make a call. There were a lot of little variables that could affect this. And if I wanted to watch something on one of my favorite sites at the time, which was Newgrounds, that was the kind of thing where I would go in, queue up the video, then walk off and do 5 other things, come back, and maybe, just maybe, it was close enough to buffering that I'd only be sitting there for about 6 or 7 minutes. It was a very different way of accessing anything online. And then I remember when I went off to college, for the first time in my life, without having to go to the school library or go over to a friend's house, in my own home, I had access to high-speed internet, and it was amazing. Offered me a very different perspective from my friends because, well, this is something that they'd had access to their entire adolescent life. Many of them had had it since grade school. It was just a normal thing. To me, it was the most amazing thing in the world. The speed that I could access things at. And because of that, the amount of things I had access to blew my mind. And I mean, I could say that when I had free time after I gotten settled, I must have spent a solid week just binging anything that I could think of on the internet. I was catching up on video series that I'd forgotten about. I was going on Newgrounds and rewatching old things, some because I really enjoyed them, some just for the sake of being able to access them within a matter of seconds, rather than having to wait half an hour. I was trying out games that would just be too slow to even have fun with. I was replaying old games to see how well they worked on high speed. It was an amazing thing. And certainly it's only gotten faster over the last few years. But in relation to gaming, it's really opened things up. Multiplayer's an amazing thing. MMOs are mind-blowing. And the idea that you can instantly connect to a service that then allows you to interact with other people in that way, not just for a conversation or for a video chat, but to assume a role in another world and then work together or against each other to achieve a common goal or to see who's the best. That's an amazing thing, and it's so fast. So, to summarize this little nostalgic ramble, makes me wonder if it's come along that fast and can be capable of that much in, I'd say, the span of a little less than 20 years, if I'm doing my math right. I'm really, really curious to see what it looks like looking back in another 10 years. Maybe even less than that. Maybe in another 5. Maybe in another 1. You never know when the next thing that's going to change everything will pop up. But with how fast things have gone so far, I'm intrigued. I'm curious. And I don't know where my life is going to lead me. But I do kind of get romantic on the idea of one day sitting down with someone who is just starting out their life. Maybe like a grandkid or like a little cousin, a niece, a nephew, a relative, someone as an older man and telling them what it was like when I was a kid to have to sit down and use dial-up to access something that, well, in the future they're probably going to be able to access through some sort of synthetic contact lens in their eye. I don't know. Or maybe we'll all be in a virtual world like the Matrix. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed that. And as always, if you've got some memories like that, or thoughts or ideas on how, or if you remember what dial-up was like, or how the very concept of how we access information like that has come along, or how it's going to change, I'd be interested to hear it. So by all means, put it down in the comment section below. And as always, my name's Rye. You guys take care of yourselves.